French President Emmanuel Macron will face off with far-right candidate Marine Le Pen of the National Rally Party in the country's second round of presidential elections on April the 24th. If elected, Macron will become the first French president to win re-election since Jacques Chirac 20 years ago. But the race looks tighter than it did the last time Macron and Le Pen came head-to-head 5 years ago. What crucial issues are guiding French voters? What would a Le Pen victory mean for France, for Europe and the rest of the world? And is France leaning more right than ever before? I'm pleased to be joined from Paris by Professor Joav Toker at the American Graduate School and from Shanghai by Arnaud Bertrand, a French entrepreneur and activist. Thank you very much for joining us, especially for Professor Toker because it's midnight in Paris. I appreciate that really much. So let me go to Professor Toker first. Sorry, I make that mistake all the time. So in the first round, Macron got almost 28% of the ballots. Le Pen got 23% and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, representing the far left political parties, got 22%. So if you add all the 12 candidates together, there's an obvious three-way split and more people turning far right and more people turning far left. What's your interpretation of the situation?
Yeah, that's correct. That's perhaps the most important single characteristics of the first round vote 3 days ago. Namely, if you add up all those voters in France who, for whatever reason, opted for the extreme right, plus all these who voted for the extreme left, you get about 63 to 65% of the electorate, which means that 2 French men and women of the electorate are choosing extreme time options. This has never been the situation. Some of it may be explained by the French electoral system of 2 rounds, etc., but it doesn't change profoundly the nature of the confrontation within French society.
We'll talk about the reasons in just a moment, but compared with 5 years ago, Arnaud, Macron's votes in the first round increased by 3.8%. He represents the center, and he got the biggest rise among the top 3 candidates. Mélenchon's votes increased the second highest by 2.4%, while Le Pen's far right votes rose by 1.9%. What does that mean? Basically, although you have greater polarization, you also have more votes for the center. Is that the reality?
Yes, I think overall it shows that the French have a very big desire for dramatic change because the most meaningful change is indeed more French voting for far left and far right parties. Like the professor just said, at least 2/3 of the French did. But the irony here is that France, because the French disagree on what change they want exactly, they will likely end up with Macron, which by definition is no change at all, since he is the same president as the past 5 years. Of course, if Le Pen wins, there will be change, but it will be a change that a very large share of the electorate, those who voted for the far left, fundamentally disagree with, so it would likely lead to a lot of tensions in French society.
So Macron will face off with Le Pen during the second round, and this is not the first time. This was a rematch by some people. Last time, Macron beat Le Pen by 60%, 66% versus 34%, quite a big majority. Some people say this time the race will be much closer. Professor Toker, what's your prediction?
Oh, the race will be for sure much tighter than the situation 5 years ago, that's for sure. It will be that tight that there are some predictions, rational predictions, not adventurous ones, which actually do not exclude the possibility of Madame Le Pen winning the race. just to situate you, the polls over the last 3 days situate the situation between the two between 51% to 49% in favor of Mr. Macron, all the way to 53 over 47 in favor of Mr. Macron. So it is in favor relatively of Mr. Macron, but it is far away from being beyond the statistical error margin. And of course, without speaking about the dynamics of these 10 days left of the campaign between the two rounds, which traditionally in France and elsewhere show us that there is a capacity of both candidates to create new, to pour into the electoral confrontation new elements which make the difference. So it is tight, it is fragile, it isn't very nasty, it's aggressive, but not yet very nasty. My prediction is that it's going to get even nastier over the coming 10 days.
Le Pen first ran for president in 2012, but the party she represents is often seen as controversial due to conservative policies such as on immigration, globalization, economic nationalism. She's been called the French Trump. But Arnaud, what explains her enduring and actually rising popularity in France, if my judgment is correct?
I will not call her the French Trump because Trump is so unique. Plus, she's a lifelong politician, even multi-generational in her case, because her father, she took the reign over from her father. She's more like the French Orban, Hungary's Orban, I would say. I mean, what's happened is that she absorbed a very large share of the working class electorate that traditionally used to vote for more mainstream parties, like the Socialist Party. That's another key take from the election. The Socialist Party only received 1.75, I think, % of the vote, which is, I mean, ridiculously low. So yes, I think that's the key driver behind our popularity.
Professor Toker, do you agree with Arnaud's analysis? And if so, why is Madame Le Pen so popular, especially when you are experiencing the war in Ukraine? And a lot of people are very, very critical of Russia, of Putin, and yet Le Pen, you know, she disfavors NATO, and she's been called a vocal admirer of Putin and visited him during her last presidential campaign.
Yes, and actually is running her electoral campaign with money landed by both Russian and Hungarian banks. So she is extremely close to Putin in terms of internal French politics. And we have to contextualize it on the longer run, because you rightly stated 2 minutes ago that she's trying to be elected president for the third time. As a matter of fact, her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, also tried 3 times. So it's a family, if you wish, tradition, and there's a family experience in making politics. But the overall context of both Father Le Pen and daughter Le Pen are those of the extreme right, or the right of the right, which means nationalistic tendency, which means clear policies against.
But it seems that voters are willing to give her
in a larger
probably
sense against the other.
But it seems that voters are willing to give her a chance, probably, to run the country.
Because she had been successful over the last year or so to run a very talented campaign in which she appears much friendlier, closer to the preoccupations of daily life.
She never proved her ability to deliver as a leader of France.
She has zero experience when it comes to national politics. Some of her partners within her party are mayors, for example, of medium-sized cities, and their record could be slightly better or slightly worse. But actually, neither Madame Le Pen nor the circle of politicians around her do not have a substantial political experience in the ministerial or even regional experience. So if she is elected, this is going to be a serious shock internally in France and then in Europe and in the world.
Well, we're not trying to favor anybody here. We have to make that extremely clear, despite Madame Le Pen having a tougher position on China. Arnaud, I want to ask you, what exactly has happened over the past 5 years in terms of economy, in terms of people's livelihood, that they are really getting more polarized in terms of their political choices?
I mean, I think there are two key drivers to Madame Le Pen's popularity. One key driver is economic, because the working class in France and the French in general have seen their purchasing power largely stagnant over the past few decades. And the mainstream parties haven't changed this. So they're like, we've voting for the same, people.
Arnaud, I'm sorry to interrupt. Arnaud, the signal is not very good. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me give the last opportunity to Professor Toker, because there is this phenomenon that Mr. Mélenchon actually got a lot more popularity. For instance, the first round in 2017, he got 20%, and 5 years later, he got 22%. His platform is protecting the independence of France from the United States. He's also, so what can you explain his rise? 20 seconds, please, if you can.
Well, it's based mainly on what we see in France, but in other Western democracies, which is a large level of rage, of anger, of complaints regarding whoever is in power. It could be slightly to the left or to the right. But the level of protestation has risen all over the West. And this is the case in France as well. And Mr. Mélenchon's party actually had canalized much of this rage and anger into political terms with a very successful political campaign.
All right. Thank you so much to Professor Joav Toker joining us at this hour from Paris. He is from the American Graduate School. And many thanks to Arnaud Bertrand, a French entrepreneur based in Shanghai.